In this part 3 of the full 5-part deep dive, we're honing in to why men in general have a hard time effectively mobilizing and successfully advocating for themselves. In part 1, we covered the history of the gender divide in sociopolitical arenas, and in part 2, we covered the emotional economy that really lights the flame of that divide. Ultimately, if empathy determines who gets heard, then participation determines who gets change. So to that end, this part explores a paradox. Millions of men quietly agree that modern systems disadvantage them in areas like family law, education, and even mental health, yet very few will publicly advocate for reform. Where women built marches, conferences, organizations, and even academia, men built private opinions and silent frustrations. The difference is not indifference, it's inhibition, shaped by culture, psychology, and fear of backlash that we've covered already a little bit and will cover more. Participation begins with permission, and men rarely feel that they have it. From early childhood, boys are taught that competence equals composure and that emotional restraint earns respect. Research on gender socialization, such as studies by Joseph Pleck and Ronald Levant, shows that boys internalize a no pain, no weakness ethos long before adulthood. Those norms, they don't disappear when men recognize injustice. They make acting on it feel shameful. The masculine script rewards stoicism, solving problems alone, and penalizes public vulnerability. So even when a man sees systemic bias, his instinct is to endure it rather than organize around it. Advocacy feels like a complaint, and complaint feels unmanly. Social perception compounds this inhibition as well. Public discourse has turned the phrase men's rights into a cultural hazard. For most men, identifying with male advocacy carries reputational risk, sometimes even their jobs, especially in professional or social settings that are dominated by progressive language. Men who express concern for male-specific issues like custody equality or false accusation procedures or due process in universities, they all risk being labeled as bitter, misogynistic, or even political reactionary. That stigma then creates what sociologist Michael Kimmel once described as the irony of male silence. Men who wish to discuss fairness must first prove that they're not hostile toward women. Few have the patience for that preemptive defense, so they disengage altogether. Psychological research also supports the idea that moral framing affects participation. Studies in moral identity show that people join movements that align with perceived virtue. So advocating for women's welfare is coded as altruistic. Advocating for men's welfare is coded as self-serving. Because men represent the dominant gender in traditional power hierarchies, their suffering then violates the public's moral expectations. This makes collective male activism cognitively dissonant for both genders. Even men who privately feel marginalized hesitate to feel or appear as if they're demanding sympathy from a system that they're supposed to control. The result is what could be called as a moral disqualification. That's a sense that one's pain is real, but unworthy of public compassion. Empirical evidence also reveals these consequences. Surveys from the Pew Research Center and the United Nations He for She initiative show that women are consistently more likely than men to donate, to volunteer, or even to advocate for gender-based causes. In a 2019 study by Pew, women were nearly 4 times more likely to attend a protest or to sign a petition related to equality. Men, meanwhile, express awareness of males' issues, but rarely act. They engage online through anonymous forums or podcasts rather than civic public channels. That's why you can find vast digital communities discussing fatherlessness, false allegations, discrepancies in our academic systems, or biases in therapy, but almost no institutional equivalence with staff funding or policy power. Male activism has become privatized, outsourced to conversations instead of coalitions. A deeper psychological mechanism keeps this loop intact. Men are more likely to act on grievance when framed as responsibility rather than victimhood. Women's movements successfully framed injustice as a shared moral cause, something righteous to fix together. Men's advocacy, in contrast, often frames itself as an individual complaint. Without a unifying moral mission, the cause remains fractured. It's in pieces. Fathers' rights activists, men's mental health activists, and anti-bias litigants all operate in separate silos with little coordination. The lack of a unifying story of brotherhood or moral duty means participation never really does meet critical mass. Online culture has amplified this fragmentation. The internet gave men space to speak freely, but also a place to retreat. Forums and YouTube channels allow expression without exposure, but they also reinforce isolation. Digital venting has replaced physical organization. You can feel part of a movement without ever meeting another person or signing a single petition. It's pseudo-participation, emotionally validating, yet politically sterile. Some communities do evolve into echo chambers of frustration rather than engines of reform, driving men further from civic engagement. And the irony is that many men who avoid activism would benefit most from it. Issues like biased family courts and declining educational outcomes, and even suicide prevention, remain way underaddressed precisely because they lack sustained public pressure.